Hey, how's it going? Ben here, great to see you again. Thanks for tuning in. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the 6 main regions of Thailand. The Kingdom of Thailand is split into 6 main regions, and we're going to talk about them in this video. So you have the northern region at the top, that's where Chiang Mai is, very popular region in the north. Then you have the northeastern region over here, which is locally known as Issan, and that's actually, I think it's the biggest region, although it may be the second biggest. I think it's the largest in terms of size, but not largest in terms of population. So yeah, that's Nakhon, Ratchasima, and a few other areas, Buriram, Sorin. In the northeastern region, we'll have a look at that. We're going to talk about the central region, where Bangkok is predominantly, a bit in the middle. And then you have the eastern region, the western region, and the southern region at the bottom, or in the south. I wanted to make this video talking about the different regions of Thailand because you may find it useful if you're planning to travel to Thailand, if you're planning to move and work and stay long term in Thailand. Then you may be interested to know some of the different quirks of different areas, where is good to do what in different areas, where there's good food, where there's lots of foreigners to live. So we're going to look at a few of those different things, and I'm going to give you a brief overview as far as I know of the different kind of regions in Thailand and what to expect from them. Without further ado, let's jump into it, and we're going to start by looking at North Thailand, so the northern region of Thailand. And I do have some slides we can have a look at. So northern Thailand is world renowned for mountain ranges, and the high altitude gives the region something pretty unique in Thailand, which is a cool winter. So you do get some period of time in the northern region where it's actually quite cool and pleasant outside. And the northern region of Thailand borders Myanmar and Laos, so that's pretty interesting. It's good for travel if you wish to go there. The northern region is definitely more for the type of person who enjoys like mountains and that cooler weather in the winter. There's also some big cities there. They're very polished, very modern cities, such as Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai. In the northern region, very big. You'll get everything you could possibly need in those cities. So although it's mountainous and some areas are very rural and very out of the way, you can still find modern infrastructure, modern facilities, modern shops, restaurants, bars in the main cities in the northern region of Thailand. One of those major cities being Chiang Mai. So the city of Chiang Mai in northern Thailand is probably one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. A modern city with a long history nestled in the Thai mountains. The city is renowned for historical temples, modern city lifestyle, and mountains. So this picture I just showed of Chiang Mai is the Silver Temple in Chiang Mai. I have spent a brief amount of time in Chiang Mai. Sadly, I would love to have spent more time. I definitely plan on going back. It's an awesome city. It looked really cool. Like I said, in the city center, you get a very modern city. You've got shops, malls, an abundance of hotels, luxury hotels, whatever you're after. You also get a lot of history. So you get a lot of historical sort of monuments, temples, ancient walls, ancient city walls. It's a very old region. It's part of an ancient kingdom at one time, so it's very interesting as well for history. It's not just the modern city and luxuries. And probably the perfect thing about Chiang Mai is you're very close to like mountains. You can go trekking. There's a ton of nature around you that's very worth visiting. You even have like hill tribes people not far from Chiang Mai, so it's a great compromise because it's a modern city, very luxurious, modern infrastructure, but then you've got a ton of natural resources around you. So it's got everything, but it hasn't got a beach. You're very far from the ocean, so not a place for beach lovers. Chiang Mai is the biggest city in the northern region of Thailand. The second biggest city, I believe, is Chiang Rai, and it's another location in the northern region of Thailand. Very worth a visit if you happen to be there. Chiang Rai also sits within the mountains of northern Thailand and is blessed with history, mountains, and modern infrastructure. Chiang Rai is unique for its artsy vibe, being a location of choice for many Thai artists and fans of the arts. If you go to Chiang Rai, you must go to the White Temple. So the White Temple, you just seen a picture of the White Temple, that was me there. It's an amazing temple, probably the best, my favorite temple in Thailand. And it's quite a modern temple designed by a contemporary artist. and he's a very popular artist in Thailand, the designer of the White Temple. In fact, I have a print of one of his artworks just here. But yeah, it's an incredible experience going to the White Temple. I definitely recommend it if you're in Chiang Mai or Chiang Rai. The temple's in Chiang Rai, but you can easily get there from Chiang Mai. There's bus trips and that kind of thing. And if you do go to the White Temple, then there's two things I will tell you. There's a great restaurant over the road with a ton of coconuts. So it's like got coconuts on the wall, coconuts for bowls, coconuts for plates, everything. So if you see a building covered in coconuts, there's a really good food there. And also, if you go to the White Temple, don't forget to go to the art gallery at the back of the temple. So when you walk in to sort of the temple compound, you go sort of forward and then over here, and then you go back on yourself to walk around the White Temple. Over there, sort of at the furthest point, is a art gallery. You can go and look around, and it has the artist's paintings, the same artist designed the White Temple. You can go and have a look at his paintings, buy yourself a print like I did. Yeah, it's really cool, really worth your time if you're there. The White Temple is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Thailand for good reason. It looks absolutely astonishing. I got some amazing pictures there. Definitely one of my favorite places I've visited. Also in the northern region, another very popular place to go is the much smaller sort of town or village called Pai. So you may have heard that if you've looked up northern Thailand. These are kind of the three main points tourists go to. The three places I've been to in northern Thailand, so that probably says a lot. Get off the beaten track and travel to Pai, an incredibly popular tourist spot, a little more remote and deeper in the northern mountains. This is a proper backpackers town and a lot more rural than the bigger cities in northern Thailand. What you're going to get if you do travel to Pai is a ton of kind of hippies. It attracts that kind of hippie backpacker sort of vibe. A lot of cheap sort of lodging, great food, great places to drink, but much more rural and much less polished. And it's also a bit of an adventure getting there. The road there is amazing. You see the picture, that's actually a picture on the way to Pai. We drove there on motorcycles. That was a lot of fun, but if you're not really an experienced motorcycle rider, I wouldn't recommend it. Take the bus, rent a car, because it is a very dangerous road, but it's a very fun road to drive on if you are up to that. It's very good. Lots of people do that. Lots of people rent motorcycles in Chiang Mai and drive to Pai. Worth the trip, and as I tend to do in Pai, it's a really unique and a very, very popular tourist destination. So if you're in northern Thailand, check it out. The next region of Thailand is the northeastern region of Thailand, locally known as Issan. The largest region in Thailand and one of the least visited by tourists is one of my favorites. Northeastern Thailand, more commonly known as Issan, is the region I've spent the most time in, having lived there for 3 years. Issan is known for rice farms, ancient Khmer temple ruins, and Issan food. Issan is probably the most reasonably priced region of Thailand and hosts large cities, traditional Thai towns, and largely unexplored rural villages. Issan is one of my favorite regions of Thailand, the northeastern region of Thailand. Like I said, I lived there. It was like one of the first regions where I found work. I have a lot of friends there, a lot of fond memories there. It's truly a great area to go to, especially because there's hardly any tourism there. There's not zero tourism, but there's just a ton less than the rest of Thailand, and that offers a really unique experience in a country that's absolutely flooded with tourists. Usually you can sort of get away from the flocks of crowds and go to somewhere much more traditionally Thai, which is pretty interesting and worthwhile doing, in my opinion. The biggest province in the northeastern region of Issan is Nakhon Ratchasima, and Nakhon Ratchasima is a province. It's the largest province in terms of size, not in terms of population, in Thailand. So Nakhon Ratchasima, and in there is the city of Korat, the city of Nakhon Ratchasima that gets shown to Korat. That's where I lived when I was working at my previous job, and a lot of fond memories in Korat. So the city has everything you could need, whilst being less polished than the bigger, better known cities in Thailand. Thousands of restaurants that serve amazing food for even better prices, and 1,000 bars and clubs to drink until the early hours. Korat is definitely my personal favorite place in Thailand. I love Korat because it was very reasonably priced. You can live very cheaply there. The restaurants, Issan food is very famous and popular in Thailand and other countries nearby. So it's super good. Sometimes way too spicy food. There's a lot of Issan food, specifically like the som tam, the papaya salads. A ton of great food up there, and it's very, very reasonably priced. Rent super cheap, food is super cheap, so it's a great place to live actually. because you can afford a lot more. And there are a ton of bars, a ton of restaurants, but much less than the more polished, bigger cities. It's quite hard to find Western food, or it used to be. That's actually changing a bit up there now, so it's becoming more and more developed, but it's still really worthwhile to visit. I definitely recommend you check out Korat. If you're looking for somewhere sort of outside of the usual boundaries of tourist destinations, and you're in Thailand and you want to get a break from the tourists, definitely head up to Issan, and your first stop would probably be the city of Korat. If you do head up to the Issan northeastern region of Thailand and you do find yourself in the city of Nakhon Ratchasima in Korat, and you're looking for a tourist attraction, something to go and see and do, one of the most popular places to go to is Phimai, an ancient Khmer temple ruin just outside of the Korat city. Phimai is a village around an hour's drive from the city of Korat in the Issan region of Thailand. The village is famous for the Phimai Historical Park, a large ancient Khmer temple complex. At one point in the ancient world, a road ran from Phimai all the way to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, proving the significance of Phimai in the ancient Khmer Empire. An annual festival is held in the village annually. I think it's usually in December, where a boat race takes place along a river in the village, and there's a light show at the temple complex. That is a great time to visit the village if you get fortunate and those times align. It is very fun. It's very popular. Lots of people from Thailand will go to that kind of festival. But yeah, the temple complex is amazing. So if you don't know about Angkor Wat, that's I think it's the largest religious site in the world, Angkor Wat in Cambodia. There's a ton of Khmer temples in an area that was at the time much bigger than London. It's an absolute wonder of the ancient world, very worth a visit. And we're talking about a different country now. But I'm talking about that because there was a road that ran all the way to Phimai in Korat. This area would have been in the Khmer Empire, in the ancient Khmer Empire. And if you're in Thailand and want to see some of the Khmer history, then this is probably the best example of that type of architecture and temple you will see. There are a number of different Khmer temple ruins dotted around Korat and the Nakhon Ratchasima region. Phimai is the biggest and one of the best preserved, so it's definitely worth checking out if you can. It's an absolutely fascinating temple complex and well worth a visit. Also, if you're in Korat, then I would have to recommend you visit the Khao Yai National Park. The Khao Yai National Park is the oldest national park in Thailand, a massive protected natural area of mountains and waterfalls, absolutely bustling with animals. You can find elephants, deers, bears, bulls, monkeys, and much more in the park. The best way to stay here is in a tent amongst the wildlife on one of the many campsites. However, you have options. If you're not really into camping, then there's a ton of luxury hotels in and around the park. Khao Yai is possibly most famous because one of the waterfalls featured in the movie The Beach, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's a very popular movie, that was actually filmed in a few different locations in Thailand. There's one part where I think it's Leonardo DiCaprio, right? He jumps into a river and there's a waterfall. That was filmed in Khao Yai. There's a ton of very large waterfalls, a ton of mountains. You can go for trekking around if you want to. There's animals roaming free, so you potentially will see elephants. I've never seen elephants there myself, sadly, but I have friends who have, and they're very common sight are the wandering elephants who are running around the park. I've seen tons of monkeys. I've seen tons of deer, which are interesting, especially when you're camping. Sometimes the deer try and come in your tent. If you do camp, don't leave food in your tent. The animals will try and come in and get it, especially the monkeys. Next stop on our virtual tour of Thailand is the western region of Thailand. Western Thailand is a long stretch of land connecting southern Thailand to the north. It also runs alongside the Myanmar border to the west. The region is characterized by large mountain ranges and river valleys. Those were the natural border of Thailand and Myanmar. The region is relevant in modern global history as the location the Japanese Empire built a railroad through headed to Myanmar. The region is very popular for domestic travel, for its natural beauty, history and entertainment in the cities. If you travel to the western region of Thailand, then it's likely you'll be headed to the city of Kanchanaburi. Kanchanaburi is one of my favorite cities I've ever visited as a holiday maker. The city is very relaxed and affordable. There's great restaurants and bars, and they're all bustling in the evenings. There's amazing mountain ranges and national parks surround the city. And the famous river Kwai runs through the mountains and on into the city. Museums dedicated to the history of World War II and the Imperial Japanese operations in the area attract tourists from around the world. So this region is famous, I guess you would say, because of what happened there in World War II. So there is a lot of other history there, a lot of local history there. If we're talking about more modern history, then it's the World War II kind of history dominates the area. That's because in World War II, Japan started doing operations in Thailand. They were trying to build a railroad and get to Burma, which was previously part of the British Empire. Obviously, the Japanese and the British were on opposite sides of World War II, and Japan was trying to expand its empire into what was then called Burma, now called Myanmar. They were trying to expand territories in China, Burma, and eventually into India. So the route they took them through Thailand to towards Myanmar. So there are war memorials, war museums, landmarks and that kind of thing. So it's a popular tourist destination, but it's also popular for sort of history buffs, the city of Kanchanaburi. Probably the most popular spot in the city of Kanchanaburi is the bridge. On the bridge that is on the River Kwai. In the center of the city is a bridge that runs over the River Kwai. Now this bridge was built by Allied prisoners of war and citizens of Asia who were forced into labor by the Japanese army. And you may have heard of the book, The Bridge on the River Kwai. You may have heard of the movie based on the book, The Bridge on the River Kwai. It's very popular in Europe and other parts of the world. The book is a work of fiction, but it's based on a true story. It's based on actual history that actually happened in this western region of Thailand. The book is about a story about a bridge on the River Kwai. Now that's a work of fiction. That specific bridge is unknown, but this is a bridge on the River Kwai that was built by prisoner of wars and forced labor of local Asian citizens. So it's a pretty good place to go and visit if you're interested in the war history, if you're a fan of the novel or the movie. Also in the city are museums and war memorials dedicated to the honor of World War II. History buffs can take train rides along part of the remaining train tracks and even over the bridge on the River Kwai. You could also visit the Hellfire Pass, a notorious stretch of railroad that now serves as a trekking path. So you can go for a trek there. There's no longer any train lines, but there's a nice mountain trek and memorials and even a small museum dedicated to the history of the Hellfire Pass. Those interested in history, especially those interested in World War II history, should definitely check out Kanchanaburi. It's a very history-rich city, and there's lots of things to do, lots of museums, lots of memorials, and it's very striking, and it's a great place to go. I really recommend it. I loved it there. I loved it in Kanchanaburi when I went. Whilst in the western region of Thailand, I definitely recommend you check out Sai Yok Yai Waterfalls. Sai Yok Yai Waterfalls. 60 kilometers out of the town of Kanchanaburi in the Sai Yok Yai National Park is an array of waterfalls. The Sai Yok Yai Waterfalls are the most impressive group of waterfalls I've ever seen. Here you can climb higher and find more and more waterfalls. You can also go swimming in the deep blue pools below the waterfalls filled with the fish. So yeah, this is a super cool area. So it is a national park. There is a fee to get in there, but it's definitely worth it. As I said, there's a ton of sort of waterfalls. You sort of climb up and up and up, and there's more and more and more waterfalls. The higher you get up, you can go all the way up. I think there's like 9 or something ridiculous like that. Really cool. And like I said, one of the coolest things about it is you can actually go swimming, so you can jump in the pools and have the waterfalls. There's lots of people playing in and around the waterfalls. It's very clean, clear, mountain blue water. And yeah, really stunning, striking waterfalls. Definitely worth checking out if you're up there. And it's a nice, refreshing break from the heavy history around the area of Kanchanaburi. So this is definitely worthwhile checking out. It's definitely worthwhile getting out of the city because there's an absolute ton of astonishing nature in this region. Next, we're going to talk about the central region of Thailand. Central Thailand is the large stretch of land in the middle of the kingdom. Historically, this region was the kingdom of Siam and is the heartland of the ancient kingdom of Ayutthaya. This region houses large industrial centers, and cities such as Bangkok, the nation's capital. So when it comes to central Thailand, I'm just going to talk about Bangkok. That's like the big place to go. There's a few other cities dotted around. If you love monkeys, then go to Lopburi. It's a city in central Thailand, famous for its monkeys. Cool, small Thai town, ton of archaeological stuff, a lot of historical temples, temple ruins there. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about Bangkok. So let's do that. In central Thailand, the main spot is obviously Bangkok, the capital city of Thailand, and in my opinion, one of the wonders of the modern world. Bangkok is a fascinating metropolitan area. Locally, the city is named Krung Thep, but internationally, the city is named Bangkok, and is home to more than 10 million people. I'd never seen anywhere like Bangkok before arriving for the first time back in 2017. The size of the city is vast, and the density and pure amount of skyscrapers is mind-bending. The city's infrastructure is truly unique, with ancient temples, ultra-modern skyscrapers as far as the eye can see, and a spaghetti of road systems weaving up and around and down. There isn't much you can't find in Bangkok, and it's a blast for a night out. Like I mentioned, I do view Bangkok as an absolute wonder of the modern world. Bangkok's crazy, interesting, fascinating. It looks like nothing I've ever seen before. The scale and size of the city is immense. There's skyscrapers everywhere, and I really mean that. I've never seen anything like that coming from Europe, where you can see skyscrapers as far as the eye can see. It's not like there's one center in the middle with a ton of skyscrapers. There's just skyscrapers everywhere. It looks like they go for miles. There's a ton of building work. It's all very unique, very Asian. Some of it, a ton of Western influence as well. But I just mean it's one of those modern Asian cities that are absolutely mind-bending, definitely worth a visit. And it's an ancient town as well. That's the fascinating thing about it. There's a ton of like temples. There's the Grand Palace. There's the Temple Mount, a mountain in the older region of Bangkok. Then you've got like Chinatown, very interesting, quite old. You've got a ton of tourist attractions like Koh Samet Road, a strip of bars and markets that are very popular for tourists. You have the region of Sukhumvit, the modern sort of banking center where there's a ton of like malls, ultra-modern skyscrapers. There's a ton of city links, ton of different trains and sort of monorails up running around the sky. And what got me is the way the roads are laid out. Like there's a ton of like spaghetti roads, and I really mean that. They go up, they go down, they go round. You've got a temple there, a skyscraper. It's a fascinating sort of mix of history, modern architecture, modern sort of industry, ancient buildings, like fascinating place. And yeah, probably best known for its nightlife. There's an absolute array of nightclubs, bars. Definitely check out the rooftop bars. They're incredible. Nothing like, I've never seen anything like the rooftop bars of Bangkok. A ton of modern nightclubs. You really can get everything in Bangkok. I don't think there's not much you can't find there. So yeah, Bangkok is probably for sure a stop if you do come to Thailand. And there's a main thing in the central region of Thailand. Next, we're going to talk about the eastern region of Thailand, bordering Issan to the north, central Thailand to the west, and Cambodia to the east, and the Gulf of Thailand to the south. The eastern region of Thailand includes tourist hotspots such as Pattaya and the very popular islands Koh Samet and Koh Chang. Easily accessible from central and northeastern region, Eastern Thailand is the perfect destination for weekends away to this party city of Pattaya or the white sand islands of Koh Chang and Koh Samet. So this region and the islands in this region are very popular for domestic travel. Like I mentioned, if you're in Bangkok or northeastern Thailand, you can get a bus here and it doesn't take too long. It's pretty easy. There's a ton of bus links to this region. So there's a ton of domestic travel. Pattaya, I've never been, but I hear it's a blast at night. A bit of a crazy city in the eastern region of Thailand, one of the more popular cities in Thailand. I've just not got around to going there yet. I have been to the islands. This region is actually probably an area I've spent the least time, unfortunately. But I have been to the two main islands. I've been to Koh Chang and I've been to Koh Samet. And I didn't take my camera to either of these islands. I don't know why. Normally I definitely would. I think it's because they were weekends away. So when I was working and we get the odd long weekend, we'd run down to one of the islands. So I didn't really think too much about it, and it was a while ago. So all I have are a few pictures taken on my phone of Koh Samet. So I thought we might as well speak about Koh Samet, as it's one of my favourite places in the eastern region of Thailand. I am fortunate to have visited the islands in the Gulf of Thailand, situated in the eastern region, but sadly not to have taken my camera on either occasion. All I have are these low resolution images taken on my phone on a trip to Koh Samet. Koh Chang and Koh Samet are two of the most popular island getaways for domestic and international travellers. If you are in central Thailand and don't have the time to visit the southern regions, then you are in luck, as you can quite easily get to the white sand islands in the eastern region. Koh Chang is the bigger of the two islands by a significant amount and is perfect for cocktails on the beach and luxury hotels and those wishing to party. Koh Samet is much more smaller and probably better fitting to those looking to relax. Koh Chang is the much bigger island, as I mentioned, so that means there's more shops, more hotels, more bars, more restaurants, all that kind of thing. It's pretty big. It'd take you a while to drive around. It's very steep as well. It's very hilly, so be careful if you rent a motorcycle, especially if you're in rainy season. It's very slippy. It's notorious for there sort of being accidents there, especially on the mopeds, especially on sort of people who haven't really got that much experience driving in Thailand or on mopeds. So yeah, take care if you go to Koh Chang and rent a motorcycle. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff to do. I'd say Koh Chang is more for like partying, exploring, but there is a ton of nature there. The beaches are absolutely stunning there also, so it's not just for partying, but it does allow for that. There's a lot more sort of facilities to do that there. Whereas Koh Samet is tiny, it's a very small island. It doesn't take that long to drive to the end of the island and back, and it's more of like a natural park sort of reserved area. There's way less bars, way less restaurants. There's sort of a few on a road, and that's about it. So Samet is kind of better for relaxing. Koh Chang is a bit better for partying. That's how I would split the two anyway. All right, next we'll talk about our final region of Thailand, which is the southern region of Thailand. The southernmost region of Thailand stretches down and borders Malaysia to the south. The region is renowned around the world for beaches, islands, and a tropical climate. Here you can find rainforests, limestone cliffs, white sand beaches, and more islands than I could count. If you like fresh fruit, Thai curries, white sand beaches, crystal clear water, and islands, then you should consider visiting the southern region of Thailand. When I think of southern Thailand, I think of beaches and islands and the Masaman curry. That's what springs to mind to me anyway. Yeah, southern Thailand is the lower, obviously southernmost part of Thailand. It kind of looks like the tail of the country, and it's the closest region to the equator, so it gets much hotter here. It's a much warmer climate. South Thailand is much hotter in the hot season, and actually rains more here as well. The rainy season is much longer in South Thailand, which does mean there's a lot of vegetation, so there's a lot of farming of coconuts and durian and all sorts of different fruits that taste great here. So if you're a food fan, definitely South Thailand may be for you. You've probably heard of the main sort of areas in southern Thailand, but we'll go over them now, and we're going to start with Phuket. Probably the most famous of Thailand's holiday locations is Phuket in the southern region. Phuket is technically an island, however, it's connected to the mainland by a bridge and is that large it doesn't feel like an island. If you are traveling for holiday villas and nightlife, then you should go to Patong. For a more relaxed and historical spot, try Phuket town. One of my favorite things to do in Phuket was to go on a small hike up the many mountain roads and get a view of the island. So yeah, Phuket is kind of known for being a sort of a party island. Like I said, it doesn't really feel like an island, Phuket. It's quite strange, but you can drive there. There's a bridge, so it doesn't feel that much like an island. It doesn't have the same difficulties of having to take a ferry over there. You can drive there, drive back to the mainland, very easy. So it's kind of renowned as this party area, and if you go to Patong region in Phuket, then that is definitely what you're getting. Patong is kind of like a traditional holiday destination. There's a ton of like large holiday villas, holiday sort of hotels with pools. There's a ton of malls, absolute ton of bars in Patong. So if you like drinking, nightlife, go to Patong. If you're looking for something more relaxed, a little more cultured perhaps, if that doesn't make me sound arrogant, then I recommend going to Phuket town. Phuket town is one of my favorite places to visit for a holiday. It's a lot more chilled out. It's not as close to the beaches, but you can still get there. It's a little bit older town. There's a lot of history. There's a couple of museums, art galleries, Still a ton of great restaurants. There's less bars, but still some bars, so there's a reasonable nightlife there as well. And like I mentioned, one of my favorite things to do is to climb or motorcycle up to some of the viewpoints. So you've got the Big Buddha at the top of a mountain in Phuket. There's a ton of smaller hills as well, like there's the Monkey Hill, I think it was called, a few other hills, and you get a tremendous view from those spots. So I definitely recommend checking out some of the view spots in Phuket if you do go. Another massive and well-known tourist destination in the southern region of Thailand. Well, it's absolutely full of them. But the next one we're going to talk about is Krabi. Krabi is another world-renowned tourist destination in the southern region of Thailand. The name Krabi supposedly comes from the large amount of crabs that live on the beaches there. Krabi is a great place to explore natural wonders. If you go, you will see rock climbing, surfing, hiking, and much more. The landscape of Krabi is one of the most extraordinary scenes I've ever witnessed, with ocean views, rainforest jungles, and the famous limestone cliff faces. So yeah, this picture of Krabi I have is taken from a viewpoint on Riley Beach. Definitely worth a visit if you go down there. The tall cliffs are sort of synonymous for Krabi. Definitely a worthwhile trip if you can make it to Krabi. It's absolutely astonishing and it looks otherworldly. Especially if you're not from this region, you've probably never seen anything like that. I hadn't before I visited. I was absolutely amazed, even just driving around in a car around the different areas of Krabi. Absolutely astonishing. The beaches are amazing in Krabi. The hotels are amazing. There's a ton of fresh seafood, and like I said, it's really popular for sort of outdoorsy activities. You can go hiking, climbing. There's a ton of rock climbers in Krabi. I guess you could go diving, snorkeling in the ocean. You've got pretty much everything you would want from holiday destination in Krabi. I'd say it's slightly less of sort of a party area than perhaps Phuket and some of the other islands, but it's definitely worth a visit nevertheless. It's absolutely stunning in natural beauty. And finally, we're going to talk about probably the three most famous islands in Thailand. So they're in the southern region as well. They're in the province of Surat Thani. That's actually where I live now. I live in the mainland. You have Koh Tao, Koh Phangan, and Koh Samui. Probably the three best known islands in Thailand lay next to each other just off the coast of Surat Thani in the southern region of Thailand. Koh Samui, Koh Phangan, and Koh Tao. Samui is the largest of the three islands with the widest range of activities, shopping, and food options. Koh Phangan is the second largest and is popular because of a more hippie traveller vibe and is famous for the full moon parties there. Koh Tao is the smallest of the three islands, but picturesque and known for being a great place to go diving. All three islands have ferry connections and are well worth the visit if you get the chance. So it's pretty easy to travel between islands, so if you go to one, you can definitely try and go to a couple. The only one I've never been to is Koh Phangan. I've just never got around to going there. And I did live on Koh Samui for quite a while, so I should have gone there, but I didn't. I don't know why. It's not even that far. But yeah, Koh Samui is a big island, a ton of nightlife. There's a few different regions you can stay in. You can stay in Bang Rak, you can stay in Lamai, you can stay in Shawang. Shawang, more parties. Lamai, kind of beaches and parties as well. And there's a ton of villa options. There's shopping malls, lots of shops. You can get any type of food there, which is great and pretty rare for East Asia, I'd say. So you can get any type of food from anywhere around the world. Great place to go, Koh Samui. Although I've never been, I hear Koh Phangan is an absolutely stunning island. More for your traveller. It's got a real hippie vibe. And obviously the full moon parties that happen there are also world renowned, so you could probably go and check them out. And Koh Tao is mainly known for diving. There's a ton of great diving spots on Koh Tao. So there you have it, my overview of the 6 main regions of Thailand. Let me know in the comment section, what is your favorite region? I'd love to hear your opinions. Let me know if you think I missed out any sort of key hotspots that I definitely should have mentioned. I'd love to get some feedback on this video, as I found it very interesting making this video, and I hope you found it worthwhile. If you did find it worthwhile, if you found it interesting or useful, then consider hitting the like button. I'd greatly appreciate that. Consider subscribing if you live or work in Thailand, as I do, and I talk about it quite a lot on this channel, so maybe you'll find some of the videos useful, interesting, or maybe entertaining. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you next time.